In a time where society is suffering from what many call the effects of a fatherless generation, we need a place where men can receive godly wisdom and guidance so they can take their rightful place as the leaders of their community. A place where men freely discuss men's issues from a biblical perspective. Because the world won't get better until we do.
As men, we don't commit for a few reasons. One, because we don't want to. Number two, because we don't have to. Or three, because we're afraid to.
Okay. We don't want to, we don't have to, and we're afraid to.
Join Pastor Tuck and Brother Corey in the Man Cave. And be challenged to be a better husband, father, or simply the man that God called you to be. Get ready for the Man Cave on the all-new My Church channel.
Good evening, fellas, ladies, whoever it is that's joining us tonight. I'm Pastor Tuck, and welcome to the Man Cave. If this is your first time joining us, you're exactly where God wants you to be, because in the Man Cave, we help men get better, become better husbands, better fathers, better sons, better brothers, or just the men that God called them to be, by simply teaching them how to apply the Word of God to their lives and providing a genuine environment of transparency and support where they can learn and grow. So I want to encourage you to invite every brother you know to check us out every second Thursday, on the My Church channel on Roku, Fire Stick, Apple TV, Google TV at 7:30 p.m. We're right here, myself, my spiritual son, Corey Coleman, and we tackle some tough issues. We have fun, but we keep it real. We just try to keep it a buck with you. We want to break it down so that men can get better, because for us as men, we are the foundation of society. We're what everything is built on. We have a responsibility like none other, and we want to help it so that men can be better and be all that we need to be for our families. And tonight, I'm so excited. I want you, if you are a father, if you're a mother, if you're anybody who have any influence with young men, to make sure that you tune in right now. Make sure that you text somebody. If you have a young man that you know, that you love, or somebody you have guardianship of, or you know somebody who's influencing young men, to make sure that you let them know about this program, because tonight we're going to be talking about something that I think is so important in the society that we live in. And I'm going to be having a conversation that I'm sure is not a conversation that you hear very often, especially from a man of God. You hear it on the radio, you see it on television, you hear it in the barbershop. It's talked about just everywhere, but it's very seldom you hear your pastor talking about it. And I'm talking about something that we talk about it a lot, but probably not too many of us even talk about it in our households amongst our children, but it's a very important subject. And so tonight, I want to get into this tonight because I think it's something that's very relevant to our culture. Our culture is being overrun by it. I mean, you can't even watch a commercial. You can't watch a sitcom. You can't even watch a game show without these subjects coming up. And the sad thing is that the church a lot of times sits silent. And we really have got to start having some input, because the way the world and the direction that it's going. So tonight, in the words of that famous female rap group back in the 80s, Salt and Pepper, let's talk about sex. And so I'm going to bring my spiritual son, Brother Corey Coleman, to the screen, because we're going to get into this tonight. And we're excited about this conversation, because I'm telling you, we're going to keep it real. Y'all know how we do in the Man Cave. Brother Corey, welcome to the cave.
What's up, Pastor Tuck? Look, you had everybody at the edge of their seats, especially me. I know what the show is going to be about, and I was even engaged just now. So I'm excited as well. We'll get into this thing. I'm excited.
Man, you know good and well, man. I mean, it's to the point. You know, my wife and I were talking about because you know we watch a lot of television shows, a lot of programs. You know, that's how we relax as a couple. We sit back, we spend our time together. And something I was telling her the other day, we was watching this show on Apple TV called Swagger, and it's a show program produced by Kevin Durant. It's kind of like a coming of age story about a young guy playing basketball in high school trying to make it into the league. And, you know, it kind of almost has one of those love and basketball kind of undertones because, you know, he and his little homegirl, you know, when they were young, both of them were playing basketball. So, you know, she good at ball, he good at ball. So that's always been they little thing. You know, they've been partners since they was, you know, real young. But you could always see that they kind of sweet on each other. But you know what I'm saying? So, but they was kids, you know what I'm saying? So, but they was always best friends playing ball all the way up. And so, at a certain point, they kind of were girlfriend, boyfriend. But this past season, it got to the point where they actually had a scene where, you know, his mom was out of town. And so she came over, you know, and I'm like, these are kids. They high school kids.
Yeah.
Why do we need to see this on TV? Why are they sexualizing kids? And this is the stuff that frustrates me so much about television because I'm like, why is it that I want to see a 17-year-old in the bed with another 17-year-old? Why is that information? Why is that imagery that you need to be putting in the heads of our children? And this is how our culture has become. And like I said, you can't see it on it's on just about every television show that there's got to be a love interest between these teenagers. It's like, why? Why can't they just be kids? But this is how the culture has gotten. And of course, let's not even get into the music because the music is just absolutely ridiculous. You know, Ak was talking, we were on the Ak show the other day and Ak was talking about this song, man. And he sent me the video and I was like, man, I got to go wash my ears out from the lyrics of these songs. I'm like, dude, this stuff is disgusting to me. And these are young ladies talking. I'm like, dude, what is this world we're living in? How this hypersexuality is going on. And I think a lot of it has to do with how we're raising our kids, how we're coming up. And this stuff didn't just start today. This stuff had a lot to do with how we came up in our generation, how you came up in your generation, and how these other generations are being brought up. And if we don't do something about it, I mean, we're coming to a point, I think, of critical mass. I think we're coming to a collision point in our culture. And I think something has to be done. And a couple months ago, I was actually going on vacation with my family, and I walked into one of my homeboys' house, and there was a book laying on his dining room table. And I saw the book, and the title kind of caught me. And I looked at the book, and I was like, man, this looks interesting. So I picked the book up, and I'm like, okay, you know, this looks kind of dope. So I started kind of thumbing through it, just kind of reading it. And he was like, yeah, that's one of my homeboys. You know, that's his book. And I was like, yo, this looks dope. And so I started reading it for about 5 minutes. And after reading about 5 minutes of the book, I was like, yo, I called my man Ak. I was like, yo, we got to get him on the show. This book's amazing. And so I was telling Ak about it. Just by me telling him about it, he was like, yeah, we definitely got to do that. So he said he looked him up on the web and he was like, he tried to call him. And so he didn't get him on the phone. So I said, well, let me ask my man if he got a number for him. And so, of course, he called him. We got him on the phone, man. We talked to him for about 45 minutes. And I mean, the brother was amazing. And the insight, I took the book that was on the counter. He said that was a book he had for somebody else. I said, well, you just going to buy them another one. I said, because I need this one. And so I took the book with me on vacation. And, you know, I read the book in probably like a couple of days. And after reading the book, man, I bought about 15 copies for different people, you know, you being one of them. And we eventually had him on the Ox show, man. And I told him, I said, man, we got to have him on the Man Cave to discuss some of the concepts that he has in this book. And the title of the book is called Black Sunshine, S-O-N, Sunshine. And the author's name is Dr. Terrence Wells. And we got Dr. Terrence Wells with us tonight, man. I'm so excited. And that's why I'm telling you, if you know anybody who has a son, who has a young man that they have influence in their life, I'm telling you, if you don't go get a copy of this book, and if you don't get them and watch this show with them, I'm telling you, you don't love them like you say you do. Because I'm telling you, this book is definitely a tool. I swear it needs to be required reading at every institution of higher learning. It ought to be required reading for the senior. It ought to be on the senior list for high schools. It ought or freshman reading for high school, but it definitely ought to be freshman reading, part of the freshman seminar in college. Because I'm telling you, this is some information that every young man, every young woman needs, because young women are getting in relationships with young men and don't understand how they've been taught to operate and don't understand what's wrong with them. And that's what's part of the frustration that we're seeing in society right now in these relationships, because we don't understand what's going on with each other. And so that's why even this information we're sharing, that's one of the decisions God gave me about even taking the man cave to this public platform. The problem is we don't understand each other. And so if we're going to be in relationships and our family's going to be better, we've got to get a better understanding of each other. So before I get too caught up, I want to bring Dr. Wells to this conversation, because I'm telling you, he got some insight that has just blown me away. And I'm telling you, it's something that's definitely needed in the body. So I want to bring to the cave, and welcome to the cave, Dr. Terrence Wells.
Thank you so much for that great introduction, brother. I really appreciate you having me aboard today.
Man, I'm telling you, man. I know Corey. I know Corey's been excited about this, man. We've been trying to get this on the books, man, trying to get you scheduled. And I know you're busy, man, and I appreciate your time, man, because Corey read the book. Like I said, I read it, man. And I blessed all my spiritual sons with this, because, all of them have sons, all of them have influence. And I was like, they gotta have this book, because it's such a tool. And I love it because, like I said, I don't have any actual natural sons. I know everybody thinks Corey is my natural son, but I've got so many spiritual sons, so many young men that God has blessed me to be an influence in their life. And I thank God for the things God's poured into me to pour into them, to see them grow up and be the men that they are and the men of God that they are. But this kind of information, I think, even takes it up to a next level. And I want to be able to equip them to be able to have the things that they need. And I think this is so important.
Definitely. Most definitely. I just had a conversation with my wife, and I was talking to her about just how challenging it is. And she finished my sentence. She said, to be a father, to be a man, because we have such a responsibility to bear the truth and to bear reality. And oftentimes you won't be their favorite person, but that's your responsibility as a man and as a father. And so I want to give a shout out to all our fathers, and we need to do more things like this to support each other, because if you don't have this kind of support, then it may cause you to get a little weak in well-doing. All right, we're in well-doing. So I'm thankful for this platform on this day that we have men that are able to come together and share.
Man, and you just said something powerful, because, I often says that this is one of our favorite phrases. Sometimes as a father, as a husband, you got to be the bad guy in the house.
Yeah.
But my favorite saying, every movie needs a villain, and I look good in black. So I don't have no problem playing that role. I don't have no problem playing that position. I don't have to be, popular. But my job is my job. My job is to make sure that you're successful. My job is to make sure you're equipped for life, because the world's not going to be nice to you.
No.
And like I said, you may not enjoy me now, but you will thank me later.
Sure. Yeah.
And I've got a 20-year-old daughter and a 23-year-old daughter. And one thing about it, they often recognize it. They may not tell me, but they'll tell their mom all the time. They're often parenting to her things that I have told them. Now that they're in their young adult stages, they're often reminding her and sharing with her how I've prepared and equipped them for things that they're even encountering now. And so that's why I always encourage people, man, you got to stand on this wall. You got to do this, because this is your assignment.
Stay strong. Yeah. Stay strong.
Yeah. But, it's funny. I was even listening to the intro, that for the man cave, me and Corey were talking about, that men don't commit for 3 reasons. Either they don't want, because they don't have to, they don't want to, and, what was the other one we said, Corey?
They don't have to, they don't want to. They don't know how to. Did we say that? I can't remember.
Yeah, that might have been the other one. They don't how to. I said, but the fourth one that I just recognized after reading Dr. Wells's books is that they're incapable. And this is something we're gonna get into, because I never realized that there's actually some science behind the fact that's affecting those things. And so that's why I said this is going to be a deep conversation, man. And it is so rich, it's so powerful. But first, let's start talking about what we're seeing in society, man. This over sexuality of society and culture that we're seeing, and how we're seeing this become so pervasive, and how this has become so dangerous that we really need to start addressing this, and what you're seeing as your profession, because we know you're a professional counselor. I didn't share that with the people, but you're a licensed professional counselor. You've been dealing with young men. Share a little bit about what you do for a living and how, so they'll understand who's talking to them from this perspective.
Well, as you mentioned, I'm a licensed professional counselor as well as a licensed professional counselor supervisor. And I have a PhD in general psychology. I have about 26 years of professional experience working with children, adolescents, and families. And so my specific specialty has been African-American men and family systems. And so that's basically my background and what I bring to the table. And I am a service minister. And to me, ministry simply means help. I help people. And so that's what I'm about. And so much of my impressions came from not only my experience clinically, not only my experience individually, but also research science and practical implications and things that have manifested through years of experience in my practice.
Yeah, and share with them some of the things that you've seen, I guess, that actually led you to write this book.
Well, just the overall condition of our people at this stage, just seeing some of the same issues over and over again, particularly with African-American men, because we've always been the object of scorn. And what I'm noticing is a decline in Black masculinity. I'm noticing a decline in Black manhood, whereas we are becoming basically the exception instead of being the rule, And so when you look at it, we're just simply not being prepared for life. And we're not cognizant of what's going on in today's world. And so right now we're not in a good state. And so that's one of the things that compelled me to write this book, because I felt like something had to be done, and I knew too much for me just not to say anything, for me not to sound an alarm, and also it's frustrating. It's hurtful, to see the condition of our people, to see our women not being protected and cared for, to see our men not being capable to care for them, to see us not even having a clue as to what it takes to be a man and care for a family, to see us not understanding the values that are required in order for you to get what you want out of life. And so just seeing all of those deficits throughout the years, it really inspired me to do something to try to provide an answer to some of the questions that we have. Not only answers, but also some real life implications and things that we can do to oppose some of the barriers that are out there today.
Man, that's some good stuff right there. And I think it's important that we understand how important this is and how deep an issue this is. From a biblical perspective, from a Christian perspective, the Bible tells us in Joshua 24, actually, verse 14 says, "Now therefore fear the Lord, serve him in sincerity and in truth. Put away the gods which your fathers served on the other side of the river and in Egypt, and serve the Lord." And here Joshua is encouraging the men of Israel to let go of the issues they inherited from their fathers, and to choose to establish a standard, because they are the leaders of their homes. So it's up to them to choose which direction their families go. And so that's why this book is such an important tool for us as men. We've got to now do the same thing. We've got to get past, time is gone for this thing of making an excuse. Well, I didn't have anybody to show me this, or I this is how I came up, or this is what was presented to me. This is the example I saw. This is what I did. Time is up for that. He said, you got to put away those gods that your father served. You got to put away the fact that, Papa was a Rolling Stone. That may have been Papa, but that doesn't have to be you, and it definitely doesn't have to be your child. At some point, we've got to make a decision that things are going to change. And if we don't, we're going to continually see the same thing. We're going to continually have the same results. And so somebody's got to make some choices different. And I think that's where the problem we're seeing in society, because I see so many parents, whether it's fathers, whether it's single mothers, whether it's mothers and fathers, repeating the mistakes that they made and feeding that same poison to their children, and don't realize, and just to use that analogy even further, if you were somebody who grew up and you smoked weed when you were in high school and college, the weed that you smoked ain't even the same stuff they smoking today.
You're right.
And so the sin that you did when you were a kid is not the same sin today. Everything is exponentially worse. And that's the thing that we don't recognize, that the world is getting darker and darker. And so that if you're trying to let your kids do the same things that you did, your kids are in much more danger, much more peril. And so at some point we've got to make a decision to change and shift and do some things different. And I think this whole concept of sex is the issue, because when I look at how society has we were raised, I know as young men, and you all probably can attest to this. As young men, you're taught when you grow up, your first conquest has to be to go out and get you some. You know, to go out, you know, that's your manhood mark. You know what I'm saying? You ain't got none yet, you know, and you know, amongst your friends, you know, that's the conversation, trying to get some. And then once you do, it becomes a competition on who can get the most, as if that's what makes you a man and that's the mark of your manhood. And that thing has fueled this hypersexuality to make us think that that's what manhood looks like. But as I was reading your book, man, you laid down a principle that I had never heard before, but I think is earth shattering when it comes to the stage and the state of our families and our culture. And we don't realize how detrimental these things, this mindset is, because you talked about the fact that when we engage in casual sex like this, you talked about the fact that there's a hormone, a chemical that is produced in the brain called oxytocin. And that oxytocin is the same bonding chemical that women produce when they have babies. And the purpose of that is for bonding. And the reason why, because God created us to be monogamous in our relations. That was the purpose, to bond and to build families through sex. That's to procreate. That was the purpose of that, is to build family structure. It wasn't just for us to go out here and do our thing and have a good time. It was to build family structure. So when we have sex, it was supposed to build that bonding chemical between two people. But when we start engaging in this casual sex, our body starts to produce less and less of that chemical. So because as young men, we're being taught to go out here and have sex on randomly, we start decreasing that bonding agent to the point that now, by the time most of us get to relationship age, which we would actually consider ourselves, you know, because some people think, you know, your mid to late 20s, early 30s, you're trying to want to settle down. And that's the time where young ladies are looking for men to want to settle down. By that time, your body is producing such little of the bonding chemical, you're physically incapable of committing, because you have no bonding agent in you to commit. And so people call it being commitment phobic, but we're actually physiologically incapable of committing.
You become desensitized. And when you look at it during the civil rights era, right before the assassination of Dr. King, all right, who did the CIA deem to be public enemy number one? Did you know who they deemed to be public enemy number one?
Black males.
The black family system.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Family system. So it was that at that moment they began to develop policies that will weaken the structure of the black family system, because they realized that from the black family system came greatness, stability, economical growth, civility, and prosperity. Right?
Man, I need to stop you right there, because you just knocked me out my chair again.
Yeah.
Dude, what you just said right there, like I said, once again, something I never knew. And what you just said right there answers everything that God has ever showed me when it pertains to these things, because I've always told people, when you look at social services as they exist, their primary objective is to destroy the family.
It was not.
They were not there to preserve and assist the family. They're literally meant to destroy a family, because if you take a young man and a young woman and they come together, they have a relationship, they're not married, the young lady gets pregnant. So they're struggling because both of them are from the inner city. They come from broken homes, whatever. But they're now having their mind, we're in a relationship. We love each other. We got a baby coming. We have a small family now that we're about to start. We just need some assistance. Neither one of us have our high school diplomas yet. Neither one of us have any means to take care of ourselves. Our families are not supportive. We need some assistance. She goes downtown. They tell her, okay, we'll assist you, but you have to put him out.
Whereas
so we'll give you somewhere to live. We're going to give you some food. We'll give you WIC. We'll give you food stamps. We're going to give you Medicaid for the baby and yourself. And we're going to give you Section 8 housing, but you have to put him out and separate from him.
Where in contrast, European countries, they subsidize the family being together.
Yes.
Right? They not only provide tax-free employment for women that had 3 children, right? All right. After she had 3 children, she get tax-free. She can make tax-free money. Also, as long as they staying together and they have children, they get a free minivan, as well as tax subsidies to make sure they're able to dwell, because they're looking at the reproductive factor and they're looking at the replacement value of citizens, desirable citizens.
Yes.
So you have desirable citizens and you have undesirable citizens, right?
Crime rate goes down.
Yes. You know what I mean? And so when you look at it, that luxury wasn't extended to us as people of color. So what I view from my research and my clinical practice and looking at life, we have all kinds of psychological warfares that are launched against us. Now they don't necessarily have to put in policies. They help to develop or to support a subculture that poisons us. Okay? Mm-hmm. So right now we're poisoned. You heard about the Mocha Fest. All right? You heard about all of this gangster rap and rap poison that's out there that's poisoning our minds. I had an incident yesterday, day before yesterday. It was Saturday. Went fishing on Lake Murray. So me and a guy who works with me. So we went out on the lake, and we were coming back. We didn't catch anything. It was too hot, right? And so when we got back right here in Columbia, South Carolina, there was 3 pontoons, right, that were packed with women of color, queens, with thongs in their behind, right? Mm. So you're looking at probably about 40 to 50 black women with thongs in their behind, basically walking naked at a lake, right? Mm-hmm. And so they're playing the gangster rap. They were playing, what were they playing? They were playing WAP.
Wow.
And so I witnessed black women between the ages of 21 and 35 with thongs on, walking naked, bending over, shaking their behind, and other women behind them spanking their behind. And I was ashamed, because you had people, other cultures, such as East Indians and Caucasians, were looking, and they were disgusted. Yeah. And I was ashamed to see our people acting like that in public and not having any kind of shame or not having any kind of respect for others, right?
Yeah.
And so I looked, and so as I looked a little deeper, there was about 40 to 50 women, but there was probably about 17 to 18 men. And out of the 17, 18 males, 3 of them had house arrest bracelets on, anklets on.
Wow.
3 of them had house arrest anklets on, jewelry, walking around, smoking, drinking, and they were having a party, you know? And so when you look at it, man, we've really lost our way, you know, as a people, not all of us, but when you look at this poisonous subculture, it's really infecting us, you know, and it's to the point now where if we don't do something to combat it or even to remedy it, things are going to continuously get worse, because you got to look at it a little closer. Those same women will reproduce and have children. Right. Their children will witness their mother shaking their behind with a thong between their legs, walking naked, and that's what that same joker, and their fathers is going to be that same joker that has that house arrest anklet on their ankle. So let's look at it from a probability or statistical perspective. What's that child's chance of surviving or being productive in society if his mother is shaking up behind off a wall, walking butt naked, almost butt naked in public, and their daddy got a house arrest anklet on?
Very low.
All right. So we have to look at this thing from a cultural perspective, and it's to the point where we used to be a very proud and a very moral group of people.
Mhm.
We were the ones that civilized them. All right. We were the
Yeah.
ones that civilized people that were not of color. Am I correct? When you read history, all right,
Absolutely
the
right.
Africans were the ones that civilized the Europeans. But now we're to the point where we're so sick, to the point where if they leave us to our own devices, we will self-destruct. And that's essentially what we're doing. So when you look at the demographic and the population of people of color in America, my hypothesis is simply this. They're leaving us alone to our own devices, and they're allowing us to destroy ourselves because we're not getting married. We're not building strong family systems. We're not supporting each other. We're not focusing on education and uplifting our people. We're just having fun and shaking our behind and dancing to the beat, getting drunk and getting high. And so we've been reduced down to the lower sciences. And I'm really concerned because I see adolescent males coming in all the time, and that's all they're about. You know, when you try to talk to them about values and the right way of doing things, some of the concepts they've never heard before in their life. Delayed gratification, sexual morality. I mean, just the basics.
Yeah,
They're looking at you
basics.
like, dude, I don't know what you're talking about. And a lot of them, of course, are unchurched. They've never been to church. They never heard the words of the scripture, right? This is the population and this is the generation we're dealing with. And it's not all of them. And sometimes I have to watch myself because I realize that, I work in the psychological discipline. So oftentimes I see those that have issues, right?
Mm.
I see those that a lot of times have issues or they're sick. But when you look at the data, it's really concerning. So I digress. We'll get on another topic or subject, but I apologize for going on a run. But this is very concerning,
No,
and we have.
I think that's great, especially being able to the way you broke that down as far as being able to see, okay, what that cycle kind of leads to.
Yes.
And I guess even a step further would be, and I'm sure we'll go into it as we kind of dive through the book is, ways that we break those cycles, identifying, and then, how do we break those cycles with this next generation? And how do we, even, break some of those cycles, not only with the next generation, but, within ourselves, those that have come up in generations where this not have been, or, they may not have had those resources and, such as the man cave or such as Black Sunshine to kind of rely on.
Well, we have to really begin to develop our young men and our women. We have to work this thing from both ends because Pastor Tuck, you said something that was instrumental. A lot of them can't afford to be men. Brother, you know how expensive and how hard it is to be a man.
Mm,
So I took it personal because I got married a little later in the game. I got married when I was around 29 years old. I'd already had 2 kids, right? So I was a part of that single family demographic as well. So I understand. I'm not coming off as being, holier than thou, because God knows, I've had my share of challenges, right? But I've learned, right? And so through my experiences, I realized because of my lack of, you know, um, having that kind of guidance and support, I made faulty decisions that put me in a certain position, right? So what I'm saying is we have to begin to empower our young men to be more specific and more directive with them. Stop playing with them. They coined the term adolescence because what that simply does is that extends childhood into young adulthood. All right. We allow our kids to run rampant and do too many things nowadays, and we call it adolescence, right? Without providing the proper kind of guidance and insight. So I believe instead of putting so much energy into sports and entertainment, we have to look at being more directive in terms of saying, how will you be able to feed yourself and your family? Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's one of the biggest barriers, that's one of the biggest obstacles a man of color will have to experience within this earth. All right?
Mm-hmm.
We catch hell oftentimes because we don't have the resources. A lot of men want to be men or husbands, but they can't afford to. Am I correct?
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
Right. And so, but in order to afford to, you have to be able to have certain values that you have to practice and principles you have to practice to get yourself in a position where you can be ready for a relationship or a marriage. And so, because you have accumulated this and have done this, this is proof that you have the ability to sustain a family. Because we talk about toxic masculinity all the time, but we mention nothing about toxic femininity.
Yep.
Mm.
Yeah, you said something there. You said something right there. Because the world has made it so that's almost a blanket term for strong manhood. They have villainized strong manhood.
And we don't redirect or either address the toxic femininity. When, according to the African proverb, the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world, runs the world.
Exactly.
And so my concern as well is that a lot of our women are sick, just as sick as our men.
Yes.
But we're not addressing this, because for every drug dealer, he's dealing drugs so he can do what? Get close to who?
The woman.
A woman.
Yeah.
So the vast majority of our behaviors as men is sexually motivated. All right.
Ice
Say that
tea.
one more time. Say that part one more time.
The vast majority of human behavior, period, is sexually motivated. Okay. Pastor Tuck, if
100%
it
agree.
wasn't for my wife and my children, man, I would be cool with a tent
Right.
on a
Absolutely.
fish. I might have been drinking a little bit of wine here and there, and whatever I want to catch, I eat. But whenever I had a woman and children, things changed, brother.
Absolutely.
And so whenever I got married, I go back to my story. Whenever I got married, man, I was 29 years old, I had 2 kids. I done bought a house, had a master's degree, right? Was taking care of everything that I needed to take care of, So after I got married, that old Baptist preacher, he whispered in my ear, he said, "You're a man now." And at first I was offended. I was like, man, I've been a man. I'm 29 years old. I done bought my house. I got 2 children. But brother, about 8 months into my marriage, my wife got pregnant. My second job went out. They put my wife on bed rest.
Mm.
I had child support I had to pay. I realized, because my bills went from $1,400 to $3,800, like that. Boom. Okay? And then the pressure, all right? The pressure. That's one of the first times that I ever tossed and turned with worry and looked at my pregnant wife and get up out my bed and go into the hallway of that 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom house and got on my knees in my tidy whities and put my neck on the ground and said, "Lord, help me, please."
Yeah.
Because I didn't know what I was going to do. All right? And the reason why I didn't care about her waking up and seeing me with my neck on the ground, because I was just that fearful and I didn't care. And right then I needed to talk to my father, because, man, my back was up against the wall.
Yeah.
Right. So a lot of brothers, they crumble from that pressure. But during the time whenever I was on my neck, man, praying to God with my behind up in the air, my neck on the ground, in some Fruit of Balloons, I heard the voice of God told me that everything you touch is going to prosper and you're going to be all right. And whenever I heard that, man, I got up, I said, okay. Went to sleep. The next day I had the vision of starting my own practice, and that's when I stepped out on my own. But it was that kind of pressure that a lot of brothers fold under.
Yeah.
All right. It's that kind of pressure that a lot of brothers just can't take, man. I talked about the black coat in my book as well. All right. When I talked about the black coat, when I gave that metaphor of the black coat, brother, this black coat is so heavy, we don't realize the kind of gravity and weight that we have on us simply by being a black man.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Just being born black here in America, knowing that you're the object of scorn, knowing that they don't want you here, they don't use you to get what they want out of you. So now we can dispose of you. And so all of these systems are working together to chew us up and spit us out. But we have to become conscious and we have to be proactive in what we plan to do. So back to your question in reference to, understanding we have to be proactive, we have to plan, and we have to be very focused about certain things. We have to know how we're going to be able to take care of ourselves and our families. When you look at the Asians and the Indians and the Jewish community, they're a lot more directive. They're not necessarily chasing basketball, football, and baseball. All right. Am I correct?
Yeah. Absolutely.
They're chasing, okay, what are you going to do to be able to take care of your family? Because that's your ultimate responsibility. And that's why you were sent to this earth, to fulfill these obligations as a man. And so we just don't have that kind of clarity as a group of people. At one point in time, we did. But then, as I said, we lost our way. And so now a lot of the things that are nature, that are natural, are being used to destroy us. And our value system is in reverse right now. What's good is bad, what's bad is good. And we're swallowing it hook, line, and sinker. And so we have to begin to, be less tolerant of this foolishness. And so, I digress. So I hope I answered your question, brother. When you asked me that question, did I answer your question?
Yeah. I think that was perfect, and I think it, leads into, even, further discussion as to, kind of what you hit on as far as when you hit that floor and, you made a choice, to pray and to ask God for guidance in that moment there. But there's so often that, there's also, other choices that could have been made,
Could have been
and I
small.
think,
Yeah.
yeah,
Could
yeah,
Yeah.
it could,
have
your mind could have
been
went, what, look, let me make this run real quick. Let,
Yep.
let me do this. Let me
Let
think
me
of,
go get this. Let me put this
conniving
package on
way
the
to make this
street.
work. Right.
Yeah.
Let me figure this thing out. But it goes back to, boils down to, our choices, not mistakes, not, mishaps. This is a choice you made, so, being able to recover from those choices, and as well, knowing what choices, you should make and being able to listen to God, as you go through that.
and
This. Go ahead.
you said something key, because males typically self-medicate through drugs, alcohol, or sex.
Yep.
All right. Because
Mm-hmm.
sex does release serotonin, dopamine, and those neurotransmitters that bring you pleasure, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. It's a medicine, it's a painkiller, but it should be used within the confines of marriage, and we have to be more directive about our sexual practices. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Sex is a good thing. Okay.
Yeah.
But oftentimes we use it outside of the context or confines of marriage. Because as you look at sexual transmutation, y'all familiar with sexual transmutation?
Go ahead,
Right.
break it
Break it
down
down
for
for
him.
Okay, when you look at sexual transmutation, brother, this is an old science. All right. This is an old ancient science. We often
Okay.
hear about, us telling athletes, before you have a big game, you need not have sex the week before. You need to be able to retain your vital energy. You need to retain your semen, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've heard this. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Semen reason being is because once you release, man, your vital energy has been depleted, right? So sexual energy is also creative energy. So once we understand that same energy we can use to have an orgasm can be used to build a business or build a civilization or build a family, we can begin to harness that energy, all right, to create something versus just depleting it. Now, if you're within the confines of a marriage, and this is something that science is beginning to study more so, whenever a person is spiritually grounded with with a woman, with his wife, and he has sex with his wife, that energy is not depleted, that energy is recycled.
It's transferred.
Yeah.
It's recycled. So that's why you could actually, indeed, a man could actually have sex with his wife the night before, but still wake up the next day and be rejuvenated and regenerated. Whereas if he was to have I guess you could say casual sex, then it would be wasted and would be depleted, because the two become what? One flesh,
One
right?
flesh.
Okay, now. Okay. So
Yeah.
when you look at it, that was supposed to be the marriage. If
Yeah.
we keep it real.
Yeah.
All right. That's whenever the two became what? One
One
flesh.
flesh.
And Gabriel blew their horn during that process, and the horn meant the orgasm or ejaculation, which create what? Life
Yep.
to the hereafter. So when you look at it, even if it didn't create life, the husband and the wife would be able to come together in union to create a greater reality. And she can minister to him and he can minister to her. And I'm quite sure y'all have heard that bridge over troubled water, right? Okay. So there's a ministry within marriage, but there's a relationship and a responsibility within marriage.
Yep.
Nowadays, people are having sex without responsibility and without ministry. And ministry simply means help. Because whenever you line with somebody who's not in agreement with you, you're really destroying yourself. And the scripture says, living that kind of life, the life of whoredom, will make your bones brittle. And whenever I saw those women, I hate to see it because I love my scriptures. And I tell my daughter this and all of my young ladies that I work with. In Proverbs, it says, a beautiful woman with no discretion is like a gold ring in a pig's snout.
Yep.
Okay. That's scripture.
Yeah.
Whenever you got a woman who's not dressing modestly and discreetly, in God's eyes or in man's eyes, it's like a gold ring, but it's still in a pig's mouth. Yep. And guess where you're gonna find that gold ring?
In the mud.
In the mud. All right. And so our women, and our women are supposed to be the conscience of the man. That's what a virtuous woman is. Am I correct, Brother Tuck?
Oh, you preaching, son.
She's supposed to be that one to tell you, baby. Sometimes when you have those little deviant thoughts or negative thoughts, it doesn't necessarily have to be nothing sexual. It could be something, hey, whatever. And she'll be like, nah, you might want to rethink that.
Yeah.
And then you say, damn, okay, you're right, baby. Then you come back, and at the same token, you're supposed to act as the same thing for that woman. So you have the balance of the man and the woman. So my biggest concern right now is that the man is looking at himself as an independent of himself, and the woman is looking at himself as an independent instead of us looking at each other as a unit, which is what God created us to be. He created us to be one flesh. That's the closest to God that we can be, is when we're in union with that husband and that wife from a metaphysical and a spiritual perspective, but we've lost our way. So when we look at what's the latest statistic on single family, on single parent births, I think it was like 77%, 78%.
Yep, it's up there.
Among African Americans.
Oh, okay, that's what I was going to clarify. Is it overall or just African American? Okay.
Yeah,
African Americans. I'm looking at our.
Yeah, it's close. It's close to 80%.
Okay, and it's getting worse. Okay.
Wow.
It's getting worse because when you look at all these other movements, I'm not going to even call no names.
These alphabets.
Look at a lot of the movements.
We in the man cave, Dr. Wells.
Yeah. We keeps it a buck in here. You talk about that alphabetic agenda.
Yeah, we keeps it a buck, but one of the things they've done to the scientific community and the professionals is that, we just have to tread lightly,
Yeah.
And of course, things are getting worse because our values are not where they're supposed to be at this juncture. And so that's part of the reason why every other group is taking advantage of us and is leaving us right now. They've stolen our values and we've let our normative values go and say we're just going to live life by the seat of our pants. That's not for all of us. I'm not saying that all black people are doing it right now.
Yeah.
But you look at the data, you look at what's going on in our community, you'll realize that we have some serious issues going on.
Yeah.
So,
and I guess. Go ahead, Pastor. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Cole.
So I was going to say, it kind of seems like that all kind of goes back to or kind of leads to, or I guess is rooted in selfishness. And I know you can elaborate on that, Pastor Tuck, but just as far as, understanding kind of what you're saying, Dr. Wills, as far as everybody, kind of doing their own thing. Women are doing their thing, guys are doing their thing. So we're not doing a quote unquote thing together, as far as a family is concerned. And I think part of that is due to, um, you know, certain movements that we've been through as far as, single independent women. And from there leading to, men that, may at one time maybe wanted to have that family unit, but being kind of faced with, uh, women, expressing the, you know, not needing a man or not needing him, it seems to me that he had to focus on himself. So how do we combat that, and how do we recover from that?
One of those things you just said it. Dr. Wells said it earlier that the black family was considered public enemy number one, and we got to first recognize that it's a target. It has been that we're being specifically targeted. I think one of the greatest deceptions that the enemy has done is made people believe that he doesn't exist. And so we're just going along every day acting like these are not strategic schemes in place to destroy you. We're just going along acting like this is just a trend, that this is just culture, that this is just the way things are now, that this is just the sign of the times. No, this is a strategic element that is actually attacking. And so if you're being attacked, then you have to mount a defense. You have to have a counterattack. You got to have a plan for something that's actually being strategic against you. And that's the problem. We're acting as if nothing's happening, that this is a coincidence, that this is just, how things have changed. No, things did not just arbitrarily change. Like I said, Dr. Wells can pinpoint that these are things that actually happened specifically, and they're happening on purpose, and we're not being purposeful about combating these things. We're not being purposeful about how we're educating our kids. Like I said, when we all grew up, and I was talking about that, how we grew up, learning to pursue sex and those things of that nature. One of the things that we look at how society we've trained our males and females in society. Men are taught that sex is the ultimate goal, and you do anything to get it. You lie, cheat, steal, whatever it is. So they'll tell you, oh, just tell her you love her, just do whatever. So you'll do whatever it is so that you get some, and then you do whatever to get as much as you can. Girls, because they are emotionally driven and emotionally satisfied, they want to feel a certain way. So they've been taught compromise just so that you can feel the way you want. So if that means you have to sacrifice your body in order for him to say the things that make you feel a certain way, because your daddy's not there to confirm you and affirm you. If that makes you feel good for him to say that to you, then you can be abused, you can be mistreated, you can be lied to, whatever, in order to do that. So they learn to compromise, and we learn to take shortcuts. And so we develop this pattern. And so now, like I said, once again, when you get to that place of actual adulthood, of relationship years, like I said, you're ill-equipped for relationships. And that's why you see so many people having trouble sustaining marriages. You have so many people having trouble trying to sustain a relationship, because they're ill-equipped to, because the world has taught us. And like I said, even this thing, when we look at dating, this whole concept of you get with somebody, you make a commitment to them, and then if it don't work, you break that one and you do another one. It's psychologically training yourself for divorce. So you're making up in your mind, this is what I'm going to do. And then you're physiologically, because of this casual sex movement, you're physiologically training yourself to not be attached, to not commit. So now all of these things are working against that whole family unit. And so at some point, we've got to make a decision. I'm not going to operate that way. I'm going to be celibate. I'm going to trust God. I'm not going to just go out here and just be getting in these relationships. I'm going to start seeking God. I've got to learn to do something different. I've got to make a different decision if I want a different outcome. I can't keep listening to everything, because the Bible says, guard your heart, for out of it flows the issues of life. So I can't keep watching these Real Housewives shows, these, hookup shows, these pleasure islands, and all these kind of things that are out here teaching me that this is how relationships are supposed to go. And then I'm eating that stuff, and it's putting these thoughts in my mind that this is how relationships work. I'm watching these talk shows. I'm listening to this music. So now I have these issues in my life because now this is how my heart is being formed. So I got to make a different decision to do some different stuff. I've got to go through this. If I've been in this behavioral process of having casual sex, doing these things, I've been listening to this music. I got to stop listening to this music. I got to stop this behavior, give my brain time to heal, and actually start to reform different patterns so that now I can make different decisions. Because like you said, this culture has gotten us to this critical place of total selfishness. And the Bible says where selfishness and envy are, so is every evil thing. Everything that we see in society comes back to this place of selfishness. We have no concern for anybody else. And Dr. Wells said it earlier. When you start talking about manhood, I define manhood as simply this: it's responsibility. And so if you can't get to that place of taking care of your responsibility, it's simply because you don't care about anybody else. You know, you said it when you talked about how when you got married and the pastor told you a man now. That moment when you were in your tighty whities with your head on that's because you felt responsibility. And at that point, most men have a decision to make. Either I'm going to handle my responsibility or I'm going to run from it.
And you know, another thing too, Pastor Tuck, I'm glad you brought that up because I'm a scriptural guy as well. And of course, I've had an extensive history. You know, some things are generational curses, and I'm thankful that I was able to break a lot of generational curses. Okay. And so when you start looking at sex and sexuality, you know, I even talked about on the last show how I was sexually molested by an older female cousin, right? And so that helped me to formulate I guess you could say a premise for how I was supposed to react with my sexuality. So I became promiscuous at an early age, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think we've got to the point now we ascribe to the Burger King culture where we want to do things our way. One of the things that helped me to be delivered from that generational curse of being promiscuous was that whenever I read the scripture, it caused a bit of cognitive dissonance, right?
Yeah.
Because the streets were saying that I was the man. The community was saying, oh, you got it going on. You got all these women. You can get whatever. Because I had some power in that world, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the scripture said that I was a whoremonger.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel you, brother. I've been down that road.
And when it hit me like that, I said, oh my God. And it said that if I went back, then I was like a dog returned to my own vomit. And then it began to build me up. It began to share with me what was on the other side. If I did what I was supposed to do, if I was to put on this cloak of righteousness, if I were to try to be obedient, I said try. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because whenever you start living life, man, you do the best that you can with what you got, right? And so I'm so thankful that I had some kind of foundation, a template to go back to, all right? So a lot of brothers don't have that foundation and template to go back to. Matter of fact, oftentimes we're not referencing the foundation and template outside of our faith-based communities.
Yep.
We need to understand that for every civilization and culture to be good, we need some kind of foundation. We need some kind of template, right? We need some kind of template. And when you look at it, we gave that level of civilization to the world. The Torah, the scriptures, all right? We were the fathers of the scriptures. You know what I mean? When you look at our culture, where we came from, that was culture. What we have now is a negative subculture because it's not conducive to us living life the way we're supposed to be living life. And so whenever I talk to my kids as well and other young people that I work with, it ain't got nothing to do with what you want to do. It has everything to do with what you must do in order for you to be successful. And once you begin to do those things, you'll find that your paradigm will switch from being irresponsible more so to being responsible. And so we just have a lot of work to do. And so Even engaging our youth and letting them know, hey, look, these are some barriers, these are some issues. Yeah, I understand this is what's going on, but this is the right way to do things. And even when you talked about women doing whatever made them feel good because the man is saying what they want to hear. In actuality, women don't really start enjoying sex until after 40s. Okay? That's data driven. All right? Because they finally get to a point where they're comfortable in themselves, they're secure, they feel safe, then they can begin to enjoy sex. So really, you have a lot of females that are just participating based upon an emotional void.
Mm-hmm.
All right? They're not enjoying it. They're not having orgasms. They're faking. But they have some kind of emotional void that they want to feel. And the game is filling it versus reality. And
even to keep it that much more real, like you said, they faking it because a lot of guys are not even engaged enough to even take him anywhere near it.
Yeah. They don't care and they don't know. They're watching pornography and they jumping up and down.
Yeah. All you doing is doing some push-ups and she just sitting there letting you.
Yeah.
Because you're having a selfish experience, and because you're not engaged anything in her, and so like you said, why is she enjoying that? Because it has nothing to do with her. It's all about you.
It's all about you. The sobering thing about that. Whenever you're in a long-term relationship with your wife or significant other, you begin to realize once you truly begin to be intimate, you begin to discuss those things that are simple as whether or not you like this or not.
Yep.
A lot of people will be amazed in terms of what they thought their woman liked, but they really didn't.
And the fact that you're in a long-term relationship, it's not about you just getting it, because that's the same person that's going to be there 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So at that point, selfishness goes out the window.
Yes.
Because it's not about, there's no urgency of, well, I got to get this because this is my only opportunity, and so now you in such a hurry. It's like it's the same thing when you see people. It's almost like that mentality of a starving person at a buffet. You see how they pile their plate up.
Yeah,
because they know they only have a finite amount of time to get this food, and once they leave here, this food gonna be gone. You don't eat like that when you're at home.
No, you don't.
Because you know that food's in the refrigerator. And so it's a whole different mentality, and you get to actually enjoy it. You actually, I mean, man, that's a whole nother conversation.
You're right, Pastor, because a lot of men either oversex or they're sex deprived.
Yes,
there's no equilibrium. Either they're going all to the top, either they ain't getting enough and they're deifying, trying to get more.
Yeah,
versus saying, okay, I'm good. Like you said, if you got food in the refrigerator, you ain't worried about it. You ain't running around trying to chase in the streets. Now, another variable we need to talk about sexuality as well. I do quite a bit of couples counseling or some marital counseling, and I found that a lot of men are not able to, I'm not going to say hold their wives accountable, but there's so much stigma placed upon a man being a man. So we really don't talk about a woman being a woman.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And one of the reasons why I think that's the case is because nobody wants to mess up their consumer base.
Yeah.
Black women are the number one consumer base.
Yeah.
Everybody want to say what sounds good to the woman because they know the woman's going to come to church. The woman's going to buy books. All right? The woman's going to support. But what happens when the woman's out of order?
Yeah.
What happens when the woman is not willing to fulfill her marital obligations? How do we deal with that? Because a lot of women don't understand how to manage a man's sexuality as well.
Yeah, and I think that's a big deal. And my wife and I we talk about that with couples all the time. I think a lot of that comes from you have a lot of women being poorly taught that sex is a tool of manipulation. And so it's, he ain't acting right, don't give him none.
Yes.
And that is some of the poorest advice that people have ever given in relationships, because that's witchcraft. You're trying to bend somebody's will, and that's not how we are meant to operate with one another. And that whole concept, and I always tell men this, I said, one of the biggest issues a lot of time in your household is nobody's ever taught you how to properly balance your household. You know, you expect your wife to cook, clean, take care of the kids, and do all this, and then you come climbing up in the bed, touching her on the shoulder. She tired. Dude, learn how to wash some dishes. Learn how to cook something. Learn how to do something, because this is stuff that she doing every day. You like, yeah, well, I work. What do you think she doing? What do you think that is? And so if there's no balance in your household, then you can't expect her to have energy for you and energy for everything else. And so these are things that a lot of times men don't learn. I remember, and you talked about it even when you were talking about your relationship when you first got married. You said you had a house, you know, you had all these things in place when you got married. I told my wife, when we first got married, I already knew how to cook. I knew how to clean. Like you said, I had a house. I did all that. I don't need a mama. The one thing I didn't have was somebody in there arguing with me. So that's the only thing I need when I come here. I need some peace in my house. So I'm not asking you to come in here to be my maid, my chef, and all of these things. But a lot of times, because of these gender roles that we've been taught, that she's supposed to come in here and she's supposed to do these things, now you put all that on her. And so where's her drive to do these things? And so there's a balance in those things from that perspective that we've got to make sure that we have, because women in themselves, they take on a lot of that mentality of the house is their image, the kids are their image. And so they're going to take on that mentality. I got to keep the house clean. I got to do these things. And so there's certain things that women feel like have to be done every day. The house has to stay clean. The dishes got to be done. Cooking has to happen. And so if they're doing all that stuff every day and you're expecting them to Victoria's Secret every night, you're going to be sadly disappointed. So as men, we have a different level of stamina because we can work 12 hours a day. So if you going to work 8 hours, instead of putting those other 4 in Sports Center, why not learn to cook? Or at least wash some dishes, or take something off her daily plate. And that way she's got some more energy for you on that other side. And that's how I've always tried to help couples recognize there's a balance in that. And guys it's almost a light bulb goes off, because it's like every time I want to do something, she tired. Well, dude, why you think she tired? And you don't realize how appreciative she is when you take something off her plate. So now all of a sudden it becomes a joy, because now she sees that you're desiring to serve her. Now she desires to serve you. But like
it really
you said,
should be.
go ahead.
I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead. I thought you were ending right there.
No, go ahead.
What I was going to say is what it really should be, and you correct me if I'm wrong, is, it should be the opposite. It should be the very opposite. It should be her taking things off of your plate. If she's truly coming in to be a help, you got to already have these things going on. So as a man, my perspective, like you said, Pastor Tuck, and I was like you, I already had my own place. I already knew how to cook. I know how to clean. I know how to put all these things in place. When you come in, you're coming in as a help.
Yeah. Yeah, you didn't come in to take over.
Yeah.
You're like,
you join the team.
Yeah, it's almost like instead of saying, okay, now you can come in, you can take some of these things off my plate, you like, okay, now no, you take the plate.
Right.
And now I'm going to sit back.
No, I got the plate. I just need the help.
I'm about to throw a little jazz in the game, okay?
Go ahead.
Not only are we dealing with workloads, but oftentimes when we're dealing with a woman, we're dealing with hormonal changes. Okay? And that's one of the things that a lot of men have challenges with is realizing, okay, right before her monthly or menstrual cycle, she's irritable, right? All right, she's grouchy. She don't want to talk. She's emotional. And then probably about 2 or 3 days after her menstrual, right? Then she's hot. All right. She's vibrant. She wants X, Y, and Z, right? Probably about 10 days after that, she goes back into that cycle, right? Of saying, okay, I don't want to do X, Y, and Z. I don't feel like this. I don't feel like that. Helping to understand those patterns and realizing, despite the fact that you feel this way, you to a certain degree still have marital duties and responsibilities as well. Okay.
Yeah. I got you. And you know what helps that is because women are emotionally driven, is the fact of seeing how you're treating me. And so a lot of times a woman will go, I'm tired, but the fact that he just came in here and washed the dishes for me.
Yeah.
Those are the things that men don't think about. We just think about how she's reacting to me, and we don't. I call it this: you got to sow if you plan on reaping. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times we don't look at it from that perspective. We just look at what's in front of us instead of sowing toward how we want the interaction to be. You follow what I'm saying? It's like, instead of saying, this is how this person treats, because women do it the same way. They like, well, he's not been treating me right. This and that. Well, why don't you do something nice for him and see his response after that? Because a lot of times all we do is look at what's in front of us and complain about what's in front of us instead of sowing toward what we want.
And you know, I definitely agree with that, but also what we see oftentimes across the desk is men sowing too much into a woman's emotional construct. Okay,
mm-hmm.
Men that are allowing women to kind of like manipulate them, or to allow their emotional construct to determine what the constant temperature or regulation of the home is going to be, even though it's supposed to be a shared experience. But gentlemen, as we know that our women can experience some emotions, and we know there's certain times when we got to say, hey, that's just how you feel right now. Okay.
Absolutely.
Now we're going to be all right. You feel like this, but that's not the way things are. Those are your feelings. Then the next day, my wife would get up and say, you're right. I apologize. Right?
Absolutely.
If I bow down and say, and I start compromising some of the things that I really need to do, or things that I know that are right, and come off some of the principles by virtue of her emotions, that I'm losing as a man, and I'm being weakened as a man.
No,
and so
you're exactly right on that. No, I never tell a man to compromise what you know is right, and that's one of the things we have to teach a lot of times when we talk couples, is understanding. I always tell women this. I said, you don't realize you're the only one that can make a man, your husband, compromise his standards.
Yes.
I said, because that's the power you possess, but you have to be careful how you wield it.
Yes.
Because that's the position you've been placed in for that reason, because there's sometimes where he may need you to turn him. Like you said, I may be about to flip off and about to hurt somebody, and I need my wife to change my mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
I said, but you need to be judicious about using that, because otherwise it becomes manipulation.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to recognize the authority, the power that you've been given. Because watch this: if you've ever seen, if you've ever known anybody in law enforcement, they'll tell you there's a spot you can grab a man under his rib, and you can get him to do anything you want him to do. And that's that same rib where God took and made woman. If I grab that rib, I can turn you any direction I want to. Mm-hmm. And that's the point. That rib can change your mind. It can change your direction. And that's the role she plays as your rib. But she has to understand the responsibility that comes with that. And that's something definitely, like you said, that my wife and I, we always try to make sure they understand that responsibility, because as a man, that term we always talk, when we talk about husband, he's the house band. His whole job is to hold that thing together. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so you cannot make him compromise that, because that's not going to be for your benefit or anybody else in the house.
And if that husband is doing what he's supposed to do, and not saying he's perfect,
no,
but if he's making your life easier, if he's protecting you, covering you, taking care of your children, making your life easier, you have a responsibility as a wife to meet his needs. Okay. And so that's one of the things that we really have to go back to, versus saying, I don't feel like this, I don't feel like that, well, I'm this and I'm that. Take care of the man's needs, then whisper something in his ear. All right. Because if you don't take care of his needs, the streets will. And that's just how this thing is going down, And so we have to look at it more so, according to Maslow, they take it off and put it on when you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Sex, they take it off and they put it on. But one of the reasons why I would like for it to remain on is because in order for anybody to have been born, they had to participate in some kind of sexual act, right? And so we have to go back to the formulation of the marriage so we can understand we have a relationship and we have responsibilities. And so nowadays, I'm seeing a lot of women operating out of the masculine, okay? They're not realizing the power they have in their femininity, because if a woman is able to be feminine and be a woman, then more of that man can emerge. And I understand we have some outliers out there. We have some bums out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we got a lot of good men out there too. Okay, we got a lot of good men out there too, and they're deserving of an equal share and of a good partner. But the sad part about it is nobody really taught the man how to be a husband or taught the woman how to be a wife. That's one of the things me and my wife had to trial and error until finally we got to some kind of understanding of what our roles and responsibilities were and what they are to one another.
Yep.
And so I think we have to be a lot more directive in teaching. To be honest with you, people start talking about arranged marriages. I believe that this world, our people will be in a lot better state because arranged meant that they were able to pass the review of the elders. Brother, wouldn't you be able to tell your daughter who will be a good candidate for her to marry?
Oh, I definitely gonna have veto power. I can tell you that now.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And so
they already know that.
And so wouldn't your wife
player?
they already know if he there's certain cases. I'm gonna tell you now. You can walk him back up out of here.
You know why? Because you're looking at his character. You're looking at the principles he's trying to live his life by. You're looking at his background, what he brings to the table. You're looking at the basic core elements, how he treats you. You're not looking at whether or not he's cute. You ain't looking at whether or not he played basketball.
Yeah, I don't care nothing about none of that.
You don't care whether he got on the latest J's.
Don't care about none of that.
The car he drives. You're going to look at his heart, and then you're going to look at his character. And then after that, you're going to say, I like that boy. Right?
Yeah.
And that's the young man who I would approve that message for. Now, when you look at, I think, which prophet was it? When he sent his attendants out to find a wife for his son, I think it was it Isaac?
It was Isaac.
Okay, he sent him out and he said, okay, I want you to go find, but he sent him back to his homeland. Am I correct?
Mm-hmm.
He said, I want you to go back to my homeland. I want you to find a suitable wife for my son. And so while he was on his way, he was riding a camel. How many camels he had, bro?
I think it was 3. I think it was 3, wasn't it?
He had a lot of camels. I think he had more than 3. But anyway, he had a lot of camels. But while he was at the well, there was a woman at the well, right? And so he asked the woman to bring him some water. And while that woman was there, she not only gave him water.
But she watered the camels.
Yeah. You know how much water a camel can take?
Yeah. Yeah, so, was like, she bought that life.
Thank you. She's humble. She gonna serve. She's respectful. And evidently he saw a decent spirit in her. Mm-hmm. And he took the ring out of his bag and he said, what? I got me one.
Yeah.
He said, we ain't got to go no further.
Yeah.
And so as I look at women and I look at men, we have to begin to look at our hearts and not necessarily the behind or, the outward trimmings of what the world would have us be blinded with. So we have to go back to those foundational structures that we've been talking about in terms of our mate selection and how we plan to live our life. That's just my perspective, biblically speaking.
You definitely own that. We've got to get to that place, and we've got to get to the place of, like you said, teaching people how to operate in relationships, because the husband and wife relationship, like you said, it's a relationship that the two have become one flesh, and everything you do in that relationship has to be for the benefit of the other and not yourself, and that includes the sex. And so when you get to that place, sex doesn't become an issue between the husband and wife, because when you have sex, it's not even about you; it's about pleasing your spouse. And so if as a man, every time you have sex is about pleasing your spouse, you ain't got to worry about her turning you down.
Yes.
If that's how you get down, like you said, when, as they said, don't threaten me with a good time. That will become your response, and so that has to become your approach. But when you approaching something selfishly, if I'm not getting any benefit out of it, then I'm not going to be so enthused to participate in something that I have no benefit from. And so when you change your approach, and I know this the case, so we're gonna keep it a buck. I always tell men this: it's impossible for a man to have a bad sexual experience, because as teenagers you learn to have sex by yourself. And so if that's the case, you tell me when you ever had a bad sexual experience, because you were always successful even when you were by yourself. So you got to learn to put energy into somebody else's experience if you want to have a pleasurable experience with your spouse. And so if you put that kind of energy in, then you don't have to worry about this thing of she's not servicing me. But like I told you, we've been taught to be selfish, and we got to break that selfish spirit. And if we do that, our relationships will look a whole lot better.
You're right. Brother Coleman, tell me a little bit about how have you noticed that the dynamics have changed in terms of, I know you're a couple of years younger than us. Mm-hmm. But how do you feel like that? Because I want to know about some of the current trends or some of your peers and how things change with male and female relationships. What have you noticed?
As it pertains to what? Like just
in terms of relationships and sexuality. Because I know it was a different dollar whenever when I was coming up, versus, because things change within kind of like a 5-year span. When you look at culture, subculture, the trends change. So how old are you? 33?
Yeah, he about 20 years younger than us. Yeah.
Okay. So in reference, how have things kind of like changed, or what's your perception of what's going on now today? I guess I can say.
So I guess I don't know how quite to answer that. I've been married for 5 years now, going on 5 years now. So as far as, where relationships stand, I think it's definitely different from your generation, just based on kind of the example that, you guys had from your parents. So I think slowly, that has shifted the way that we view families, and as you alluded to earlier, kind of how the family has kind of been broken apart, as far as the Black family anyways, and trying to regain that. And with that, the taking off of, within the entertainment industry, and everybody trying to kind of emulate, what they're seeing on television and different things like that. And kind of again, another layer is, kind of where we are today with the alphabet gangsters. You got all of this stuff and all these different variables that kind of shift, where you at. Not only, are these, women shaking their tails and things like that, like you mentioned earlier on the boat, and thongs, once upon a time they were doing it for the guys, today they're doing it for the ladies too.
That whole concept of just women going hang out at the strip club. I'm like, what is that? That's like, dude, what is that?
One time you want to keep your homeboys away from your girl. Now you got to worry about your girl and her homegirl. Yes. Like, you don't know what's going on. So it's so many different variables, and there's so many layers, I guess, to that onion.
And they're becoming they're pulling a rag off the bush, man. Have y'all heard that song "Lipstick Law"?
No, man. I try to stay off the radio nowadays, man. I tell you, my ears can't even handle it. And I was a gangster. My ears can't even handle this stuff.
Brother Coleman, you heard that song?
Look, I have not. I'm out the loop. I got a 3-year-old and a 13-year-old. I'm trying to guard ears as much as possible around here.
And the reason why I'm I guess, working with adolescents, man, it's like we don't realize the impact that it has on them, man. They singing this stuff, man. They acting out on this stuff. So I'm in the loop with all of their little stuff, and it's like, my God, really?
That ain't the one where they talking about the booty hole.
No, you talking about.
You ain't even heard that one. So yeah, that one kind of came by my ear the other day.
Lipstick. It's about a woman that loves other women that's a lesbian, and she's depicting what she's doing to a woman.
Oh man,
it's out here. So I say that to say,
uh,
go ahead.
when you get a chance, check it. I know y'all grown, but y'all check that out, man. And it gives you a sobering view of just how sick.
How the depravity.
Yes, and you got to stay woke now. All right, I ain't talking about the Republican woke, but you got to be aware because we have children in this world, right?
Yeah.
I don't care how much we instill in them. It doesn't mean that they're gonna go down that road, but we got to be aware of the forces that are forced against them.
Oh, we recognize that all day.
So they'll be on guard and they'll realize there'll be an answer to it, man. So yeah, there's a lot that's going on now, and you got kids in elementary school saying lipstick lover, man. You know, you're talking about 9, 10-year-old little girls, right?
Yeah.
So this is the level of programming that's occurring among our people, and this is something that's almost exclusive to people of African descent because a lot of them other folks, they're not allowing that stuff, they're not tolerating that stuff.
Yeah.
All right. They're just not. They're cutting it off, saying no, we're not going to do that. And so that's why we're seeing more of a separation now. A lot of these folks have gotten a lot of that. Y'all remember the New Deal with Eisenhower, how they put all that federal money out and subsidies to dominant culture? They did it again. And you know when they did it?
Stimulus packages. Stimulus packages.
Yeah.
Stimulus packages.
Yeah. And so they did it again, but what that did was that fortified the dominant culture where they can be more dependent and they can draw more of a separation line between them and those that they deem to be undesirable. And so they'll say, okay, let them get as sick as they want to be. All right. It's almost like catapulting a disease carcass into your village. You know, the problem is we're looking around and we're saying it's stinking, it's got maggots and flies on it, but we're not going to take a shovel and throw it out and bury it. We're just going to look at it and fan the flies around and have a party around it. So that's where we are right now. You know, it's a sick and perverse culture. It's sick. You know,
man.
So I know we've been on the soapbox. So yeah, I haven't.
Oh yeah, man. This been awesome, man. I tell you, this has been absolutely awesome. I guess I end it this way. There's a scripture in Corinthians chapter 10, verse 19 says, "Moreover, brethren, I did not want you to be unaware that all of our fathers were under the cloud, all passed through the sea. All were baptized into Moses, into the cloud and into the sea. All ate spiritual food and drank the same spiritual drink, for they drank from a spiritual rock and followed them, and the rock was Christ. But with most of them, God was not well pleased, for the bodies were scattered in the wilderness." He said, in other words, they all had the opportunity, but they didn't enter into God's best. He says, because they were overthrown in the wilderness. Verse 6 says, "Now these things became our examples to the intent that we should not." Now, some people always want to say that experience is the best teacher, but experience is the teacher of fools. History is the best teacher because you can learn from another man's mistake. If you can see somebody else did these things and have struggled in these areas, then you can watch how they ended up with the issues that they have and avoid them. And that's what we've got to start learning is by seeing the things that we've done wrong or see things that other people have done wrong and make those corrections. But he said, lust after evil things as they also lusted. See, lust is us trying to satisfy ourselves at the expense of someone else. It's a preoccupation with what I want. Lust is selfish. He says, and do not become idolaters as some of them. As it is written, the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to play. Idolatry is a value system we create where we esteem something more worthy of our devotion than our devotion to God. He says, nor let us commit sexual immorality as some of them did. And in one day, 23,000 fell. And see, what we don't realize when we ever see that word sexual immorality, it's talking about fornication, homosexuality, adultery, pornography, incest. I mean, it's a boatload of different sins that he's talking about when he talks about that. Masturbation. I mean, all of these things are considered in that word sexual immorality. He said, nor let us tempt Christ as some of them also tempted and were destroyed by serpents. Tempting Christ means being disobedient, then wanting God to bless it. Nor complain as some of them complained and were destroyed by the destroyer. Murmuring and complaining, talking about how we don't like the way things are going, but then continuing to do the things we want to do. He says, now all things happen to them as examples, and they were written for our admonition, to call attention to, or to be a warning, upon whom the ends of the ages have come. So in other words, we've got to look at these things that we've seen as an example so that we can make a different choice. And that's basically what we're telling you today. Is Dr. Wells has given you an awesome tool to be able to change the lives of your children or even yourselves if you're in this situation. And so I'm going to give Dr. Wells the last word. I'm going to put him up on the screen. I'm going to put his book up there and let him tell you where to get this book, because I'm telling you, it's an awesome tool. There's so much information in there about sexuality, about rat poison, about so many other things. But I'm telling you, you need to get this book, because Dr. Wells is an awesome tool to the body of Christ and to our culture to help us change the dynamic of where we're going. So Dr. Wells, I'm going to give it to you.
Well, Pastor Tuck, I'm really thankful on this day for your spiritual strength. You know, that brother, you just ministered to me just now. You just reminded me of the mark. And that's what a pastor, that's what a minister is supposed to do. He's supposed to warn the people and teach the people. And so I've read that scripture before, but I never heard it quite in that way. So I want to tell you, thank you for being a witness, and thank you for being as strong in the spirit as you are. And also I'd like to thank you for allowing me to come on your platform and share something. I am a service minister. Whatever I can do to help people, that's what I do. I'm thankful that this message has managed to reach you and some of the people that you know. And it's my desire that we can reach as many people as we possibly can. I'm also thankful for the fact that you are mentoring this young man, Brother Coleman, because that's much needed. That's your spiritual son. That's powerful, brother. And I'm just thankful, and I'm glad to be in your presence right now on this day. And so again, thank you for having me. And also I'm going to be shooting those books out to you today. Matter of fact, I'm going to go ahead and do it because it just jarred me. I had so many things coming at me the last couple of weeks, and I haven't really been. My wife and I talked about me pushing my book, and she asked me, how come I haven't been pushing my book? And I looked at her, I said, baby, I'm pushing our son. Okay, because our son right now, he's making that transition, from being a senior in high school to going into college. So he has to select a college that's best for him. So I've been putting a lot of energy in him. But the book is not going to spoil, it's going to be there. And so I'm just glad to be a help to the masses. And so thank you.
Amen. Well, praise God, man. That book, once again, as y'all can see on the screen, is Black Sunshine, SONSHINE. It's available on Amazon. Make sure y'all go out and purchase it. Make sure you give them a good review. We want to make sure it's an Amazon bestseller. But go ahead and go out and get that book from Dr. Terrence Wells. Man, well, God bless you, man. Go ahead and bring Brother Corey back to the screen. Brother Corey, you got the last words for him?
Man, only that this is great. I think that, I think it'd be great to have Dr. Wells back with us again if he ever wants to come back on. That's what the Man Cave is about. And it kind of speaks to exactly, what we, try to help, men with each and every, week that we're on. So I definitely appreciate you. And I want to thank you for joining us. And I think that's great.
Yes, sir. Well, man, God bless you, man. I appreciate you. And everybody out there, make sure y'all come back and check us out again. Tell everybody, tell all your friends, y'all come back and watch this again on replay if you didn't get to see us live. But God bless you. We love you. Stay tuned for our announcements. I'm Pastor Tuck. That's Dr. Wells. That's Brother Corey. We'll see you again next time on the Man Cave. At my church, we help people get better by teaching them how the word works. And we want to make sure there is no excuse not to get the word. It's our goal to make all of our ministries accessible on every smartphone, tablet, PC, and television connected to the internet. So whether you're a man who needs some wisdom, a woman who needs some encouragement, or a couple who needs guidance, the My Church channel has just what you need. Simply search for the My Church channel on Roku, Fire Stick, or Apple TV, or visit mychurchchannel.org. You can also download the My Church on the Go app from Apple or Google Play App Store. Constantly on the move? Check out the Word at My Church podcast on your favorite podcast platform. Or simply download the Word at My Church skill on your Alexa-enabled device. But whatever you do, make sure to stay connected. See you soon.